I will go on the record and we'll call this to order and do a roll call. Chairman Potter present.
Here, Amanda Moss.
Vincent Tatum present.
Susan Heltsley present.
Michael Cunningham present.
All right. Are we in conformance with the open meeting law?
Yes, we are, Chair.
Okay. Item 3, public comment. Comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. If you wish to be heard, come forward and give your name for the record. The amount of discussion as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed may be limited. I look out in the crowd and I think that it's safe to close that. Oh, would you like to speak? Okay. In that case, then we'll close that and we'll move to item 4, which is for possible action to approve the final minutes by reference of the regular meeting of March 27, 2023. Do I hear any comment or a motion?
Motion to approve. Amanda Moss for the record.
I second the motion. Susan Heltsley for the record.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. It has passed. So we'll go to item 5. Report by Michael Cunningham, Deputy Building and Safety Director and Building Official regarding update to the Enterprise Fund budget for fiscal year 2023. Michael.
All right.
Is this the first time you've been on this side?
Last meeting was my first one, so it's my second one.
Okay, see,
I'm a veteran now.
All right. Welcome to this side.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to go over, first item is going to be going over our end of year budget for fiscal year 23. But first, I just want to make one quick introduction. So Josanna, who usually helps out with all our budget stuff, she recently took a promotion to Public Works. So Tasha Ely down in front there, she is taking over all our budget duties, so you will see Tasha moving forward. This just recently happened, so I have promised her I'm not going to call on her in this meeting. I will answer all the questions, but I did still want to introduce her because you guys will see her moving forward.
Well, welcome, Tasha. You realize you have big shoes to fill. She did an exemplary job all the time, so welcome.
All right, and with that, I will get started.
Mr. Seth. Thank you.
I will get started. I think I said, for the record, Michael Cunningham, building official for the City of Las Vegas. So going over the end of the year, or fiscal year 23 end of year report, starting off with the revenue, you can see we finished just slightly under what our projection was. So we finished at $16,190,914. Our projection at the end of that fiscal year was $17,674,606. So we finished just slightly under it. I did want to point out one thing because I'll discuss it a little bit in the next item as well. The life safety fire permits, if you look in our revenue, that's probably the largest jump we had. That was a relatively newer fee that we had charged last year, so we got one full years of collection now, so we'll be able to better project forward, but you can see we were collected over 126% of what we were projecting on that line item. Moving on to the expense side of it. Labor, we finished just slightly under our proposed budget as well. Slightly over, sorry. $9,977,828, and our projection was $9,908,269. And then going down to our discretionary items, we finished just under that one as well, so we finished right at 90%. So we ended up spending $15,327,315, and our projection for the year was $16,988,171. A couple of the bigger line items that you'll see where we were able to save the most money. Up at the top, the other professional services, it's line item 510900. We only spent 44% of that budget. We've been able to manage a lot more of the workload with our current staffing, so we have added in residential plans examiners, and we got fully staffed up with our combo plans examiners. So we've been able to keep in a bit more work of it, more of the work in-house. So we haven't been spending quite as much of that consultant money as we have in the past, which has been able to help us save money at the bottom line. Just as a reminder, this was as of August 18th, so finance still does go through their final audits and stuff, so there may be changes. Historically, we haven't had anything significant, but if there is any significant changes, I'll make sure at the next meeting to point them out to you guys if it changes any of our year budget. And then just to wrap it up, so that left us, we always look at our reserve balance at the end of the year. So as of August 17th, we are slightly over our 50% allowable. So we're at 143,801 over the allowable amount. Last year we were under, and again, after the audit, we'll see if that stays true or not. But that's where we're at with our reserve balance. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Please help yourself.
Member Vincent Tatum, for the record. Mike, this is good information that you're referencing in terms of the other professional services and the staff. Sounds like your staffing levels are in line to where you don't have to rely so much on third party. Is that what we're coming from with that?
Yes. Yeah. So we have, right now, we have 5 combo plans examiners and 1 residential plans examiner. That's just going to be starting. So with that workload, we've been able to keep a lot more of it in-house.
And follow-up question to that one, with that, are you finding that your goals for turnaround time and everything else are also being met? Hasn't been any compromise, I guess, in terms of the in-house staffing versus the turnaround times for plans and inspections?
Yeah, or for the record, Michael Cunningham. I think I forgot to say that last time. For the record, Michael Cunningham. Yes, and that's kind of how we're deciding which projects to send out. So if we keep a larger project in, like we kept Civic Center Plaza in, and we know that's going to back us up for the next couple of weeks, we'll send more out to the consultants. And then just if in general we start to get too far outside of our stated goal of the 2 weeks, we'll start to send more out to the consultants. So that's kind of been the lever we've been using to maintain that. So the trigger usually is if we get to around the 3-week mark, then we'll start sending more to the consultant so we can get back down to our 2 weeks, and then we've just been balancing that back and forth.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead, Ms. Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amanda Moss for the record. Mr. Cunningham, can you speak a little bit to the 2 overtime line items? I know that it looks like 70% of business, or building and safety, of the overtime budget allocated has been spent versus 189% of the fire overtime. I didn't know if, bringing that in third party, if that's kind of taken a toll on staff, or if those are okay overtime numbers historically, and whether or not that 126% increase in the fire life safety permit fire plans check is covering those overtime dollars adequately, given that our overall budget is slightly under projections. Thank you.
For the record, Michael Cunningham. So I'll speak first on the building and safety overtime one. So our overtime numbers include both our plans examiners and the inspection side of it as well. I think right now we do a pretty good job balancing their workload. Our main area that gets used for overtime is our structural plans examiner. So that's been one of the positions that's been we've struggled to fill over the years. We've tried. We recently got the engineer associate last year to help out. Now he can only do minor structural reviews because he's not a licensed PE. So Nanette is still only our structural plans examiner that's licensed. So in order for him to keep up with the 6 plans examiners we have, he tends to have to work a bit more overtime to keep up. We try to keep a good balance on that. If we need to, we will start to send out structural only to our consultants. We do pay a reduced fee if they do structural only, so they get 50% of our fees if we do one discipline only. So if we start to get too much, or if Nanad's not available, we will balance that out that way. We don't typically charge any fees for the overtime on the building side. We just do it as unreimbursed, just as a department function to keep up with our goals. On the fire side, and then Sherry might be able to speak a little bit to this too in a later item, theirs is reimbursed overtime, and the fee we do charge covers their hourly rate to do those services. So while it is a spike up, the revenue is collected to kind of offset that balance. They have recently got another AFPE, and then later she'll be talking a little bit about some other plans that they're trying to do to help bring on some more staff and maybe even get that number down a little bit.
Mr. Chair, follow-up. Thank you, Amanda Moss, for the record. Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. I know that was a lot in one question, but I think that makes a lot of sense how you guys balance, and I know we've had conversations in fiscal years prior that just of concern with a a one-person body in an entire area of study to plans check. So I think, you guys, hats off to you for trying to find that balance and utilizing those third-party processes that you have in place to offset the challenge that I think the entire industry and every jurisdiction is experiencing right now in terms of staffing. So thank you.
Michael, you done?
Yep, that's it,
All
unless there's
right.
any other
Susan,
questions.
Any questions?
Susan Helsley, for the record, no questions from me.
Okay. With that, we'll close that item, number 5, and we'll let Michael Cunningham, Deputy Building and Safety Director and Building Official, regarding update to the Enterprise Fund for fiscal year 2024.
All right, thank you again. For the record, Michael Cunningham. So in your backup, you have the backup for, or the finalized budget for fiscal year 24. So we presented our tentative budget at the last meeting, so I wanted to go over what our final budget ended up being approved at. If you recall, this year, because of the economy and stuff, we weren't sure how much construction stuff there was, so we kept a relatively flat projection on our revenue. So if you look at our revenue projection for the year is $18,322,628. That's just up $648,000 from the previous year. So we kept it relatively flat. The one item, like I mentioned in the last item, was the fire life safety permits. So if you see, that looks like a huge jump, a 40% increase on projected revenue. That's really just based on this year. So this year we collected the $800,000 in their fees, and so we did a projection based off of that. Previous year we were projected pretty low, so it looks like a large jump, but it's really not. If you look at our other revenue line items, they're all about 1 to 2% of an increase. We think that's what there's going to be in this upcoming year. Looking down at the expenses, same, our expenses projection for the year is $17,322,076. That's up $337,000 from the previous year. And again, we held everything relatively flat for the expense side of it, minus the standard labor increases. We do have the July numbers, so we did go ahead and plug those in there for you. Projections are shown on here, but because we only have the 1 month, the projections are most likely going to be way off because it only has 1 month to really project off of. But it looks like we're kind of in line where we have been in the previous months. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
I'm sure we have some questions down here to my left.
Vincent Tatum, for the record. Question for you, Michael. In terms of the miscellaneous fees line item, showed a decrease in the projection by 54% for the budget. Can you give a little bit of background as to what that represents? It's in the revenue portion for miscellaneous fees.
Yeah, or for the record, Michael Cunningham, line item 270100, I believe.
Yes.
672,000 is what we had budgeted last year. So let me double check. Yeah, so that projection is based off of what we did on the last fiscal year. So if you look at the previous line item, fiscal year 23, on our miscellaneous permits, you see we only collected 45% of what we had projected, which is just under $300,000. So this projection is based off of what we did last year. And so because we didn't collect as much last year, the projection this year seems low comparative. I'll have to double check for you and get back on what permit types that miscellaneous fees covers. I think we might have some of our discretionary type of fees that we've talked about in the past in there, and we've done away with a couple of those programs, so that might be why that number's been down so low. But I'm going to have to double check with you on that one.
Thank you.
Ms. Moss.
How'd you know, Mr. Chair? Amanda Moss, for the record. Can you speak a little bit on the interest on investments? If that, 402% reduction has more to do with like bond rating or more to do with interest rates? And the reason I ask, to avoid a follow-up question, is from what we've seen, the Fed isn't necessarily indicating that there's going to be slowdown or reduction in interest rates anytime soon. So can you just, maybe I'm way off base there. Thank you.
Yeah, for the record, Michael Cunningham, building official, and this one, I'm striking out here. This one I might need to get back to you on as well, or Susan might be able to help me out with that one.
Ms. Susan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Susan Heltzley, for the record. So the interest income, basically, we have to do a mark-to-market, and it is on the bonds themselves that we hold. So the bonds that we have, their face value right now is higher than their market value because of what's happening in the interest market. But when we go to sell them, that will even out. So it's a kind of a fake thing, for lack of a better word. But we do have to do it based upon our gap. So that's how we're coming in with that interest being down so low. We are experiencing, though, higher returns this year. So that number could be better than what we expected. But our bond rating went up this year from an AA to an A+. So luckily, our interest rates to borrow will be lower. But unfortunately, the market's just acting really strangely right now. So we're putting in our best guess on what we think it's going to be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? If not, are you done, Michael, with that report?
Yep, that's all I
Okay.
have.
We will close item number 6 and move on to number 7. And again, we get to hear from Michael Cunningham, Deputy Building and Safety Director and Building Official, regarding overview of the Enterprise Fund budget. Oh, I jumped right. Regarding the 2024 code adoption schedule and process. Excuse that mistake.
For the record, Michael Cunningham, building official for the city of Las Vegas. Yeah, this one was one of the items we talked about at the end of last meeting that you guys wanted to update on, so I just wanted to provide you the update. So the 2024, we have officially kicked off the code amendment process for the Uniform Plumbing Code, Uniform Mechanical Code, and the National Electrical Code. Those codes have all been published, and so we're going ahead and starting that process so the committees have enough time to get through it and make sure, especially since we skipped a cycle, it usually takes us a little bit longer to make sure there's nothing major in there that we're going to miss that might impact the industry. The other I codes, we are still waiting on them to be published, so the building code, residential code, swimming pool, spa code, residential code, all the I codes are still not fully published yet. So they are waiting on the energy code. We are hoping that will be published here first quarter of next year. Our goal is to have the code adopted by late summer next year with an effective date 6 months after that, but it's all going to be dependent on when we get those I codes. And that's dependent on the Code Council and when they will provide them. If that keeps continuing to get delayed, our process will get delayed, so it might be later in the year next year. But as a valley, the building officials have met. We really would like to get it done sooner rather than later, because right now we're a little bit all over the place, right? We're city and Henderson are on the 21 IBC and IFC, 18 everything else. County's on 18 but 21 energy code. Like, everyone's kind of all over, and we want to get all back on the same track for the industry. So as soon as we can get it processed, we're going to try to get it done. But right now we're a little bit dependent on another agency.
Chair Potter, I have a couple of questions. What is the significance between published and actually adopted and being in place in the market?
For the record, Michael Cunningham, building official. So published, that's just when the publishing agency, so the International Code Council, once they go through their full code development process, and they do a code correlation committee to make sure everything's been analyzed and cleaned up, they then publish the books for purchasing. Once they do that, then we can purchase them, and then our code committee can then look at them and determine if we need to amend them, what changes there are, what impacts there are. So we have a code committee for each section of the code that we put together to make sure that we thoroughly vet it, to make sure industry knows about any changes, we know about any changes. Then we present that package to our council. If they vote on it, and then at that point it's adopted. And then we always have an effective date to allow the industry time to adjust for it. So publishing is really the third-party company that produces the books, and adoption is our formal process to make it a requirement. Hopefully that helps out.
Committee, any other questions? I'm sure. Ms. Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amanda Moss for the record. Mr. Cunningham, we've had some challenges with, as you mentioned, the kind of every other code cycle versus 6-year cycle. And so with the signing of the MOU for residential fire sprinklers with the 18 code. I just have a request when the city goes to draft the ordinances associated with the 24 adoption, if there could be some additional language that talks through what prevails under different conflict. So there's obviously the IFC, IBC, IRC, then WUI, then the MOU, and then even what's in Title 19. And so maybe some additional language, understanding that those are generally pretty copy and paste each code cycle. I think we'll run into challenges as we continue to move through the code cycles. And so City of Las Vegas Fire did put out an industry notice that speaks to that, but I think just for future plans checker, future industry, having it in one place instead of looking in the MOU, then looking in an industry notice, then looking in the consensus amendments, then looking in the city's ordinance is just a lot of documentation on top of each other. And then one other item related to the 24 code that might be better discussed on item number 11 is I know that in industry's review of the 24 energy code versus the NEC that there are some conflicts as it relates to electrification. And I know that while the county was adopting the 21 energy code and electrification, they chose to, rather than in the building code, they chose to have many of those provisions in their zoning code. And so I think trying to, as you're going through the review process of the building code, understanding again the conflicts of what lies in planning and zoning code versus what lies in building code would be really helpful to have that kind of one-stop shop. Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Vincent.
Yes, Mr. Cunningham, I have a question regarding the code adoption cycles between the different jurisdictions and the dependency of City of Las Vegas to adopt its codes versus those that may not have the same requirements, like Clark County and City of North Las Vegas. So my question is based off of the provisions that the City of Las Vegas have accepted that requires now that you adopt every code cycle. What is that relationship and dependency between how you work with other jurisdictions that don't have the same requirement?
For the record, Michael Cunningham, building official for City of Las Vegas. So when we're on the same cycle, it's not as big of an issue. So on this current one, everyone wants to adopt to get us all back on the same page. So this one, Snowbo puts together all the steering committees, and all the jurisdictions agree to be a part of that process. So we all go through it at the same time. So our schedules are going to be relatively close, probably a month within each other, if I had to guess, because we're all going to get the amendments at the same time. All the building officials are going to review them and say, okay, we agree with these all at the same time. So when we're on the same cycle, it's not as big of an issue. The alternating cycles does become a little bit more of a free form, because at that point it's only us and Henderson, and Snowboat typically doesn't follow through on that process because the other jurisdictions don't adopt. And so on those ones, it's really just up to us and Henderson. We kind of, just like we did last time, we'll have our own schedule. I know when we went through this last time, there was some feelings that maybe it wasn't as, it didn't go through the same vetting process. So next year, or next time we go through that, we will, keep that in mind. But on this 2024 cycle, we should all be pretty close to the kind of same schedule. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question, Vincent Tatum, for the record. So thank you for clarifying that. I guess maybe more directly, my question is there any time-bound requirement for the City of Las Vegas to accept its codes that could be disrupted by other jurisdictions that don't have to follow the same rules?
For the record, Michael Cunningham, building official. No, so I don't foresee that being. So the state law, when we had to adopt the WUI, was modified to give us 2 years from publication date. So our time-bound commitment is when ICC publishes that building code, whatever that date is, say it's January 5th, 2024, we have to adopt by January 5th, 2026 in order to stay under our mid-rise provisions. This cycle, I really don't see taking that long, but If it did, at some point, we would have to adopt even if other jurisdictions didn't want to, but we would be able to hold off until 2026.
Thank you for the clarification.
Chair, Michael, any more on that report? That's a wild one.
Yeah, that's it. As we go through the process, we'll make sure industry's involved there. We welcome them on all the committee meetings. They have votes on all the amendment process, so we welcome anyone that wants to come to them and work with us on those, and I'll keep you guys updated as we get closer.
Just kind of go one, Chair Potter, one step further from that. When we end up with different code compliances in different jurisdictions, is it more political or scientific?
For the record, Michael Cunningham, building official for the City of Las Vegas. So the way I would answer that is, we want the mid-rise provision. So what's really driving this right now is we want mid-rise in the City of Las Vegas. If you look at our downtown, we are more adaptable and more, we think we can get more success with those mid-rise products. And those high-rise provisions, it just was making them too expensive. And so we wanted to do that. And by default, the way the state law is written, it forces us to have to adopt. So I would say it's a little bit of both, because it's something that our council and our Economic Urban Development Office wants to be able to offer these mid-rise downtown at a better price. And so it comes from that side of it. But then scientifically, the rest of the country and the international code allows mid-rises at 55 feet. So from a technical standpoint, these buildings are just as safe as anywhere else in the country. And so it has, a little bit of both sides to it.
Chair Potter, Michael, excellent answer. So based upon that, we will close out item 7, and we get to go to number 8 with Michael Cunningham, Deputy Building and Safety Director and Building Official, regarding projects with significant impact to the Building and Safety Division resources.
All right. Once again, Michael Cunningham for the record, building official for the City of Las Vegas. So this one, this came up at the end of our meeting last time too as one of the additional topics you guys wanted us to cover. Because it's talking about projects, I thought it'd be good to put together just a little presentation. Pictures always help out. So I'm hoping this is going to work. So we're going to go over some of the larger projects that we have coming on in the city, and then some development agreements that we're working on that have a potential to generate a lot of work for us as well. And let me get to my notes so I get this right. So to start off first, one of the things I did, I reached out to our Public Works Department and our Economic Urban Development Department. These are just some of the projects that they're working on over the next year. Just to highlight a few of them, and we'll have some pictures on it. They're working on a new 15,000 square foot CSN Workforce Training Center in the historic West Side. That's going to be going out to bid later this year. And then they're working on a new regional aquatic complex addition at the Pavilion Pool facility. So you can read through a few of these as well. Public Works, with all the CIP project that they have, that tends to keep us pretty busy. We always know they have work coming down the line, and we get a good sense of it because we were involved with the CIP process, so we know what projects they're working on, and they keep us up to speed. These are some of their larger ones that they've been working on. The next one I want to highlight, probably you saw as you were walking across the street, which is our new Civic Center building and plaza that broke ground earlier this year. That one's a $165 million CMAR. It has a 250,000 square foot office space and then the 1.5 acre outdoor special event plaza. So this one, we've issued them the foundation permit, so that's why they're going there, and the superstructure actually, so they actually have the whole structural. They just resubmitted, so we're working on the TI build out of it now. So that one over the next couple years, we're going to be involved obviously heavier on the inspection side at this point. The plan review, we're pretty much wrapping up to the last bit. There's a couple renderings. That's the entrance off of Main Street. This is kind of an aerial view of it, so just to orientate yourself, the intersection on the south corner of that picture is Main and Bonneville, looking northeast. City Hall's the glass building up at the northwest corner of the picture. And then here's one of the actual plaza. So this is just directly opposite of the corner we were just looking at. So now we're looking back towards Main and Bonneville. So that's the 1.5 acre outdoor plaza. That's a part of this project. So it's kind of and it can be activated for special events or any outdoor events that people want to use, similar to what they kind of did in Water Street with the activation of their outdoor plaza area. The next one, so these are just a couple of the pictures that I mentioned on the first one. So this is a couple renderings of that West Side Education Training Center. So there's one of the rendering of the outside of the building. Here's the overall or site plan that you would see for it with the landscaping and the parking off C Street in Jefferson. And then here's the interior floor plan, so a standard building. But these buildings that come along through the CIP process, they're pretty consistent, and so it helps keeps our staff busy and moving. The next one, this is the Regional Aquatic Center. So this is going out at the Pavilion Pool area out by Palo Verde, if you're familiar with the pools that are out there now. This is a new Regional Aquatic Center that they're working on. Here's a rendering of the outside of it. And then we have another rendering of what the inside's going to look like with the bleachers for competitive events that they will host out at the facility. All right, next one. This one I'm personally excited about, so Universal Studios. So this one, if you're familiar with Area 15, that's where the big building along the I-15 there, they have broke ground on what's called District 2, which is just north of that. So if you're familiar, there's a bunch of warehouse buildings there. We issued them their demo permit. All those buildings have been demoed, and they're now starting to work on the grading and the underground utilities for it. The Universal building, this is one of the new things they're trying, these Universal destinations. So it's a year-round entertainment venue to kind of expand onto that Area 15, and then there's a bunch of other commercial buildings that are going along in there. Similar to a commercial, I would say this is the anchor tenant that's going to drive all the development in that area. And so this one, we're reviewing the shell permit now. The civils are approved to Mylar, so again, this one, we're almost out of the plan review stage. We haven't seen any of the TI yet. I'm assuming that'll be coming in a little bit later. But that area, they have a few more exciting things that are coming in there. They're not quite in yet, but hopefully at the next meeting, if you guys want me to present, I can talk about some of those as well. Then Symphony Park. So Symphony Park, if you're familiar, is one of the big developments that the city's kind of been working on over the past several years. Here's an overall site plan of it. So a few projects, and we'll go into a little bit more detail. The ones we'll focus on is going to be Parcel B, which is the AC by Marriott Hotel, and then Parcel C is a mixed-use multifamily building that's under construction right now, and then Parcel E is getting ready to start to kick off. And so to familiarize yourself with the location, the Smith Center is just below Parcel B, and then their big promenade separates the two. So going into the first one, this is a rendering, the high-rise Block C. So this one actually broke ground just a couple months ago. So if you drive out there right now, you'll see them pouring the floors. It's a 22-story mixed-use apartment complex with an amenity deck. And then the next one, this is the hotel. So this is the AC by Marriott dual brand hotel. It's a 440-room hotel with 20,000 square feet of meeting space. This one is right at the finish line of plan review. Just waiting on a couple more things, and then they're hoping to get the permit for this one by fall of this year to start construction on it. And then the next one, this one is coming into us. So this one just started their pre-app process. So this is the one by Red Ridge Development. It is going to be on the 5 acres, that Parcel E that we talked about. It's a mixed high-rise and low-rise portion, 30-story for-sale condominium tower, and then there is a space for a grocery store, 30,000 square foot grocery store retail space that they're trying to get in there. And then it also has 150 rental apartments and office space, and then ground floor retail and a parking garage. So this one's going to be coming in. So we use a lot of the pre-app, so we're part of the pre-app process through the planning department. So we see all the big projects that are coming, so we kind of use that to kind of forecast what we're going to see, as well as like civil plans. So those are some of the ones that are going on in Symphony Park. The next area, the Huntridge Theater. This is going to be a big, exciting project coming to the city of Las Vegas. If you heard about it a few months ago, they had the relighting of the Huntridge Theater sign. So the Dapper Companies has been working on renovating this property for a while. They just relit the sign, and they're going to be moving forward with doing a whole redevelopment of that facility with a new brewery, and then obviously restoring the Huntridge Theater back to what it was. Next in the Arts District, this one is from the Cedar Group. This is off of Imperial. It's a multi-family project with 311 apartments and 2 outdoor amenity decks. So this one's going to be, this one we haven't seen yet, but the pre-app is coming in, and so we're looking forward to this project coming forward. The next one we have is Southern Land. We call this the 3rd Street Assemblage. So this one is actually already in plan review. So they purchased all 3 corners of California and 3rd Street, so it's a total of 337 apartments, 10,000 square feet of ground floor commercial, and then each building will have its own garage. So they will straddle that whole intersection. They'll have buildings on both sides of California, and then the main building along 3rd Street. And then just north of that, Sutherland has a piece of property they're working on. It's a mixed-use multifamily project. It's still in the design phase, but they're anticipating 501 apartments with approximately 1,200 square feet of ground floor and retail, and anticipated opening is 2025. So again, that'll be a larger project that we'll see kind of coming down the future pipeline for us. Moving on, another district that we're seeing a lot of development in is the medical district. So if you recall, last year we opened up the UNLV Krikorian School of Medicine building. With that, whenever you have a large project like that, a lot of redevelopment starts to happen in that area, which is what we're excited to see. So this is one of the ones that will be coming in. G2 Capital is working on a 6-story, 156,000 square foot medical office building and a 5-story, 135-keyed hotel and garage on the southeast corner in Wellness and Shadow. So you can see there in the right of the picture is the hotel, and then the left is the medical office portion. The next one is another project by the Cedar Group. This is at Alta and Tonopah. It's called the Presley. They're hoping to break ground later this year. It'll be 203 apartments with a robust amenity package for the residents. So that's what's going on in our district. So what's on the horizon? So there's a couple large development agreements that our planning department is working on. Those always tend to generate a lot of permit activity for us. Think about Sky Canyon, Summerlin, Providence, Keystone, all those. These are a few that they have in the works. So the first one we're going to talk about is Vegas Rising. This is actually the same group that's developing district or Area 15 and District 2. So off Richfield and Wilmington, if you just go a little bit further of where the Universal Studios is going to be. There's a few warehouse buildings, and then there's a residential subdivision back in there. They have purchased all that. It's 22 gross acres. They've already received the demo permit and demoed all the houses, and so now they're working on the development agreement with our planning department. This one is a max number of 1,341 units. It may include up to 225 hotel units, and it's going to be composed of townhouses and a mixed-use high-rise building. That one was actually approved by City Council December 21st, and the ordinance was adopted on February 15, 2023. So actually now we're just waiting on the permits to come in. The next one is Desert Pines. So if you're familiar with Desert Pines Golf Course, it's off of Bonanza Mojave. City is working with a developer there to develop that. The development agreement is currently in negotiations with a projected effective date in 2024. This one is a total of 100 acres, proposed units of 1,514. It's going to be single-family detached, 3-story walk-up, and a mid-rise mixed-use development. There's also a commercial component that's going to contain some community facilities and open space, so trying to get that one-stop live, work, and play feel there. The next one they're working on is Upper Las Vegas Wash. So this one we just keep going north, as far north as we can get. And so we're past Moccasin Road now, between Moccasin Road and the Indian Reservation. It's 940 gross acres, proposed unit count of 6,000. This is going to be composed of residential housing ranging in density and property types. There's a military housing component, and then there's also a commercial component, office campus, some private military housing, and then a new school site for charter school or a CCSD school. And then it'll also have a trail and open space that connects to the Monument Park there. This one is also in negotiation, and they're hoping to have that effective in 2024. And the next one, this is just a foresight that we see potentially come in the recent BLM auction. There's 2 very large parcels in that upcoming auction for a total of 535 acres. Typically, when we see an auction of that large of a size, one developer ends up getting both, and then they'll propose a development agreement, similar to one of the ones they've done in the past. So this one's still a while away out, but we'll keep an eye on that because we're assuming that's going to be coming in for us. And with that, I will ask any questions about any large projects.
I'm sure we have some questions.
Actually, Vincent Tatum for the record. Actually, less questions and more of a compliment to the quality of the presentation. I think this is really good to have as an addition to the format and agenda, and I think it gives some perspective as well as to when we're looking at the fiscal budgets to put some correlation to what types of projects are coming up in the same year. So really good job on that, and I would encourage and recommend that we keep it moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amanda Moss for the record. Mr. Cunningham, do these projects have a fee inspector or a typical one dedicated staff during the civils process, or what does the, echoing the comments, it was a great presentation, and I think knowing where all of these projects are in the process is helpful, but I think knowing the who is also potentially helpful.
For the record, Michael Cunningham, building official for City of Las Vegas. Thank you for the compliments. I'm glad it helped out. I figured the pictures and stuff would help out. And this is what we use kind of to help us determine as we get in closer to the staffing season, like, okay, what do we see on the horizon? Do we need to staff up, or are we at a comfortable level? And then Ms. Moss, to your question, none of these we have had developers and contractors ask us. We've been able to manage it to this point. If you think about a few years ago when we had Circa going, we had the Expo Center at World Market going, we had the downtown apartments going. I mean, we had a lot of stuff going. We were able to manage it with our downtown inspectors. They pretty much just knew that was their route. They went Circa, and they went over to World Expo, they drove over to the apartments, and they just stayed in this general vicinity. Because a lot of our large projects are kind of concentrated downtown, it's allowed us that kind of flexibility. It's something we can always consider. We have done it in the past. Fremont and 9th, 5-6 years ago, they had a fee inspector. Our inspector went there and they stayed there all day and they paid for it. That's something, if it was requested, we would look at our staffing. We don't want to slow down or hinder other projects by offering that, but it's something we can consider if we can manage it. We have also recently brought on the 2 consultants for the inspection side, so we have 2 consultant inspectors that we're using. They just are part of our normal process, but again, if a developer wanted to, it's something we can consider. On the plan review side, it's just our team. There's not a dedicated one. When it comes to some of the larger downtown projects, we do have a group within our planning department. Tom Burkhart and his team, they can kind of be a central point of contact for a developer, and he will help guide them through the process and make sure they're getting a hold of everyone, and then he knows who in each department is reviewing it, so he's a good resource to help their projects kind of stay in line. But we don't typically have, a dedicated team that, okay, they're going to do just these type of projects.
Chair Potter, that was an excellent presentation, and I think some credit goes possibly to my members here to my left, Mr. Tatum or Ms. Moss, who requested that to be put on the agenda. So whoever did, and I can't recall it, but credit goes to them also. And my next question to the committee is, do we want to keep that on the agenda and then just update it? Because I don't want to inundate Mr. Cunningham with busy work, but maybe just keep that on, and anything in the next 6 months, we just add to it. How's the committee feel about that?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and for the record, Michael Cunningham, I don't mind doing it. We tend to just stay on top of these anyways, and like this presentation I did at PHCC for the heating and cooling contractors in Nevada, and so we do these kinds of presentations. Our EUD department, our Public Works department does them a lot, so it's something I would be more than happy to keep on there and update you guys as new projects pop up.
Very good. With that, we'll close that one out, and we'll
I did have, sorry, Mr. Chair, I'd add one other comment if it's okay.
Yes, sir.
Vincent Tatum for the record. I just wanted to comment, Mike, on what you just mentioned about the Tom Burkhart role of helping developers get connected with all of the resources they need. I can tell you from personal experience from working in different jurisdictions, City of Las Vegas and North Las Vegas do an excellent job of making sure that developers have access to the resources at an early enough time so that they can effectively navigate through the process of entitlements and building department reviews. So I just wanted to commend you guys for doing that and recommend that you keep it up.
Thank you, and we will make sure Tom and his team know as well.
Okay, with that, we'll close that item, and we'll have another report by Michael Cunningham, building official, regarding water restriction ordinance 6843 adopted by the City Council on August 16, 2023.
All right, for the record, Michael Cunningham, building official for City of Las Vegas. I think this is my last item. So yeah, this was one of the items we discussed at the end of the last meeting too that was asked to be just discussed. So as we mentioned last time, to be consistent in the valley, we have went through and we adopted an ordinance similar to what County and Henderson and North Las Vegas have done, which pretty much mimics the SNWA restrictions on any of the water features. So we put in there the pool size, we put in the evaporative cooling, golf courses, all those things. It's just a mere mimic of it, just to show support and again to make sure we're consistent, and then hopefully that will help any developers that are coming in to the valley, whether they're looking at our ordinances or they're looking at water district service rules. They're going to see the same thing, so they'll know up front what they have to kind of work around. So that was put through, that was adopted on August 16th, so that's in effect. Again, it's what SNWA has, so it's nothing new to the industry, but we did it just to show that consistency in the valley. And I can answer any questions.
Questions? Mr. Tatum? Ms. Moss?
I can make one up.
No, ma'am, you do quite well. Okay, with that, we'll close that item out. And item number 10 is a report by Robert Nolan, Senior Deputy Fire Chief and Fire Marshal, regarding updates on Las Vegas fire and rescue issues that can affect the administration and finances of the Building and Safety Enterprise Fund, such as updates on fire sprinkler inspections, plan reviews, and/or fees. And that's for the record, and we'll obviously modify that. Today, we have the pleasure of having Sherry A. Shoup, EFO, CFPS, as the Assistant Chief/Fire Marshal. Ms. Sherry.
Thank you. Good morning. For the record, I'm Sherry Shoup, the new Fire Marshal for the City of Las Vegas. This is my first meeting, so I'm glad to meet you all. And I have big shoes to fill from Robert Nolan, so I will do my best for you today. I have a brief report on previous fiscal year fire plan reviews. We did 8,751 last year. That's down 5% from the year before, but our review consistency, reviewed within 14 days, is up to 74% from 3%. The things that I think that have affected that, our newest Assistant Fire Protection Engineer is getting up to speed on his plan review capability. I think we're also integrating better with the new electronic intake system. And another comment that goes along with that, the electronic portal has been effective enough that it's caused us to rethink filling a position that we were going to fill. We have a vacant permit tech position. With the electronic portal taking care of a lot of the paperwork transfers that was happening in the past, we've determined that it would be more effective for our division's plans handling to convert that permit tech to another assistant fire protection engineer so that we have 4 complete engineers, hopefully help speed up things so that we're not any kind of a bottleneck for the building department, maybe relax a little bit of the outsourcing and some of the overtime as well. I suppose the other position that we're looking at is replacing a vacant fire protection engineer position with a section manager, somebody who's a working body in that group. So that would make 5 total capable of doing plans examining in that group. And I suppose I can take questions on that. It would be more effective than me thinking of more things to say about it.
I don't have any questions per se, but I just wanted to thank you for being here and glad to have you as part of this committee.
Thank you.
Amanda Moss for the record. Chief Shoup, while I can't see you, it has been a pleasure working with you over the last couple weeks now, maybe month or so. I feel like I see you everywhere, and I really enjoy that. Thank you for your update. I know that this was originally a line item that was requested by SNHBA, so I also want to give a shout out to our attorney who keeps us in line and has worked on a creative phraseology so that we can continue to have these robust discussions on, you know, the impacts and the relationship between the fire departments and building and safety. So kudos to everyone related to that. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I want to say 3 meetings ago or so, we talked about SNHBA's request to defer sprinklers similarly to processing of deferred trusses so that you and your team wouldn't have double the reviews, because essentially what you would have is you would have your submitted plan set that you would have to review, and then if there was any changes on your WNA, your water network analysis from the water district, then you would have revisions to that plan and potential conflicts. So I know we worked with your office on implementing an improvement to that process, and given your update related to the portal, that reminded me to ask this. So I apologize if this is kind of out of left field and maybe push on the agenda item, but just how is that going? Because it was previously a manual person data entry, and is that process effective on your end, given your success that you've already had with the portal? Thanks.
Sherry Shoup for the record. I would have to say I am not familiar with any changes in the process, but I can totally get back to you as soon as I find out on it. I could get back to the whole committee if that's the preference.
Thank you. And no other questions, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Ms. Shoup, are you done?
Yes, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll close that item, and we'll move on to discussions regarding topics for future agenda items. Comments made during this portion of the agenda by individual members shall refer solely to proposals for future agenda items, and any discussion shall be limited to whether or not such proposed items are within the purview of the committee and/or whether such proposed items shall be placed on a future agenda. No discussion regarding the substance of any such proposed topic shall occur, and no action shall be taken. Item 12, citizens' participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to...
Mr. Chair, I think we need to discuss item number 11. I have some items if I
Oh, I'm
if I
sorry.
can.
I'm sorry. Please, go ahead.
Mr. Tatum, did you want to go first? No. I've been trying to yield the floor. I've been trying to be a gentleman, so I apologize. Amanda Moss for the record. I do have one, maybe 2 requests. If I know we already talked about keeping the regional significance item number 8 re-agendized. I'd also like to keep number 7 agendized, but if it could also be worded largely enough to maybe receive an update from Chief Shoup and her team on their, I'm going to mess up the name of it, but the federal report that they owe that the WUI code references, whatever that assessment is. So I think, where is that assessment? How does that impact WUI and the adoption of the 24 code? And maybe a follow-up to some of the items that the committee brought up, obviously electrification and the City of Las Vegas MOU are important to us to kind of have one, maybe 2 agenda items all encompassing there. And the other item is, so I don't know, I guess that's 2, maybe 3, but one other conversation that I'd like the committee's perspective on is a number of other enterprise funds across the region are looking at some sort of salary study and fee studies, and knowing that you guys did do that in, I want to say 2018, 2019, I know that part of the increase in fees was related to staffing levels. So I think some sort of report on what everybody else is doing, because when one jurisdiction raises fees, that then will impact your ability to hire, and so just some sort of like compatibility, however that is agendized. But I think you'd hopefully understand my intent in asking that. Thank you.
Mr. Tatum.
I think all of those recommendations were excellent, so I support those being added or continue to be maintained or modified to stay on the agenda. I had one other request. I'm not really sure I'd ask it, so I'll just ask it. Would love to understand if there is a way that we can get some feedback as to the water restriction ordinance and its impact on, I guess, community or developer sentiment as it relates to the plan check process and feedback that you're hearing Obviously, there's some sensitivity about its impact to mechanical design and also potentially on impact of developers choosing to develop here versus going to other markets that may be more friendly relative to water conservation, at least in their mind. So I don't know if you have a recommendation, but would love to have a way to get some feedback, even if it's anecdotal, as to how it's being received in the community.
For the record, Michael Cunningham, building official. Yeah, so I can do one of two things. I know SNWA and the Water District, they've been doing obviously a lot of outreach because this is their impact, and I'm sure they've met with stakeholders and development groups and are tracking, and I know they're even looking at some incentive programs and stuff based on the recent state law to help with these kind of transitions. So one of two things, I'll work with Jim to figure out a good way to word the agenda item, but what I can do is we'll either reach out and see if maybe even SNWA or Water District can come and maybe even do a presentation on where they're at with the ordinance, what they've seen, what kind of stuff they've done, or if they don't want to come, I can get the information from them and I can report out on it. So I'll work with Jim and then the Water District and SNWA and see what the best avenue is to get that presentation for you guys.
And Vincent Tatum, for the record, in addition to that, I think it would also be nice to have some form of anecdotal feedback as to how the community is responding. We understand and we have heard many times what their position is on it. I'm trying to see if there's any insight we can gain from what the community believes after these things have begun to take effect in terms of the design and building.
Yeah, for the record, Michael Cunningham. Yeah, that's what I'll ask him. So I know, because we recently just had a resident have some issues, and so they actually have created an email address now that people can reach out to them with issues and concerns and all that. So I know they're starting to collect that kind of information. So yeah, I'll make sure that the topic, that's kind of what it's geared for. We don't need to rehash why the ordinance is in place, but now that it's in place, how is it being received? How is it being implemented?
Go ahead, Ms. Moss.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, one more. Amanda Moss for the record. I realize as well, if it's possible to have a reoccurring item at the end talking about our next meeting, so we don't ever go out of line with asking, hey, when are we meeting again? When's a good time? So however that needs to be worded too. I know ands and ors are a big deal. Where commas are at and how things are agendized are a big deal, you know? Thank you.
Okay, Chair Potter, regarding Mr. Tatum's last comment on the water, and what I'm hearing from Michael over here is, and I stand to be corrected by Mr. Tatum if I'm wrong, but I think what Vince is asking for is feedback from what our building department is experiencing from the public that we participate in. We kind of know what the SNWA Water Authority's statement is to date, and I think that's what Mr. Tatum's asking for.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, then obviously items 1, 2, and 3 that putting regional comments on number 8. Item number 2 was number 7, federal WUI code assessment that Ms. Moss asked for, and number 3 was a salary and fee schedule study and what that impact does on other fields. We as a committee all agree to those items being carried forward? Okay. Then any other discussion on number 11 before I move on?
Just want to ask, is this the first session that we've been through that we didn't get corrected on doing something out of practice or order? Or?
Chairman, through you possibly. I had one minor comment on 11, but now I'm going to save it.
Okay.
I was kidding.
Oh, he's out of here.
That was my attempt at the joke. Thanks very much.
Okay, all right.
Apparently I'm not very funny.
Okay.
It's okay, me neither.
We got through that. Okay, Chair Potter, item number 12, citizens' participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the committee. No subject may be acted upon by the committee unless that subject is on the... agenda and is scheduled for action. If you wish to be heard, come forward and give your name for the record, the amount of discussion on any single subject, as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed may be limited. And I look out into the public again and ask if anyone wants to come forward to the podium. And I see no one moving or raising their hands, so with that, we will call for adjournment. Thank you all for doing such a good job. Okay.